Hello again. So we're going to start a new section this week on the topic of deserving and needing. For the past few weeks, we've had a chance to talk about political authority and its various justifications and various worries we might have about whether at the end of the day our governments and other governments might not be as justified in issuing commands as we originally thought. Nonetheless, that doesn't make their commands right or wrong. It just makes them perhaps not the ones to issue them. So today, and for the rest of the class, we're going to be talking about what makes those commands just or unjust. Let's start with a broad question. What is justice? It's a very large question, many possible answers. But let's try to get at it. Most people would say justice is getting what you are due. Now, what does it mean to get your due? Well, usually this means a combination of at least three things. Having your rights and entitlements respected, people meeting their general and special obligations towards you. So their general obligations might be obligations that they have merely in virtue of you being a human being, and their special obligations are going to be obligations they have specifically towards you because they undertook them. They promised, they contracted, and so on and so forth. And finally, some people would say justice has to do with getting what you deserve. Let's continue with another question. Does Peyton Manning deserve his paycheck? Complicated question. Peyton Manning, as many of you probably know, is the quarterback for the Denver Broncos football team, and he gets paid roughly $15 million per season to play football. Many people say Peyton Manning perhaps is merely lucky to be the quarterback of the Denver Broncos. He benefits from talents that other people don't have, including perhaps the talent of being able to be a hard worker, and or intelligence, or whatever you think the success to quarterbacking is, really. Particularly, Peyton Manning makes about 150 times as much as a rich person in the United States, and probably makes about 300 times as much as the average salary person in the United States. Are his talents and are his contributions really so high as to deserve that kind of reward? Well, I think we can approach the matter in at least two different ways. On the one hand, like I said, he didn't do anything to receive his talents. He was probably lucky in innumerable ways. And if you don't think that Peyton Manning is particularly athletic, well, you still have to note that he has to be tall enough to see over his front line. He's got to be smart enough to read routes. He has to be gifted enough to throw the ball and get it there when it needs to get there. So his hand-eye coordination has to be off the charts. Moreover, he has to have been born under circumstances that permit him to develop his talent, circumstances over which he has no control, that he did nothing to further. So he has to be born into a family willing to let him develop his talents. He has to go to a college where his talents can be developed, and so on and so forth. He has to have an offensive line and wide receivers that do their jobs and make him look good. So all in all, Peyton Manning is the beneficiary of numerous benefits that he has no control over. Put another way, even though Peyton worked hard, many have worked just as hard as Peyton for only a fraction of the rewards that he gets. On the other hand, you might say, Peyton didn't steal his talent from some common pool of talent, some fixed amount of talent. No account is out of balance because Peyton is very good at what he does. In other words, it's Peyton's performance that got him his contract, not anyone else's performance. And to the extent that Peyton supplied the performance that merited the compensation that he's getting, then nobody else is being stolen from or no one else is being wronged because Peyton is getting the money that he's getting. We might think that it would be nicer if money was more evenly spread around, but at the end of the day, no injustice has been done. As long as it's in fact Peyton's performance that is being paid. Now, to ask whether Peyton deserves his paycheck is not yet to say that Peyton is entitled to keep all of his paycheck. I want to keep the concepts of desert, entitlement, and later earning separate. These are different ways of specifying the relationships between people and various holdings, goods, money that they might have. So to ask whether he deserves his paycheck is not yet to say that he's entitled to keep all of it. Why is that? Well, when we appeal to desert in matters of justice, what we often mean to do is to answer a question about whether we're entitled to keep something or whether it might be permissible for others to take it from us. So the argument usually is, I deserve that, therefore you can't take it from me. But I think that's to go a little bit too quickly. I think this move is not obvious. There are things that I clearly don't deserve that you are clearly not entitled to redistribute. So, for instance, good eyesight or various body parts. Now, you are born with the body that you're born with, for better or for worse. It does not follow, and just because you didn't do anything to deserve that body, those genetic endowments that you received, doesn't mean that anybody is entitled to take them from you. So we've got clear cases where you didn't deserve something, but you're still entitled to keep them, and it would be massively wrong if someone took them from you. On the other hand, there are things that are arguably deserved that, for good enough reasons, may be redistributed. So your salary, for instance, the money that you earn, it's true that if you deserved your salary, particularly if you earned it, that's a strong claim in favor of keeping it, but it's not an indefeasible claim. We could imagine other people, we could imagine ways to defeat that claim, to come up with stronger reasons why you should in fact give it up. So, for example, if national security is at stake, or if someone is really, really needy, we could say that those claims defeat your entitlement, and they defeat your deserving, which does not to say that you're not deserving, it just means that deserving is one reason, and there could be other reasons that come and outweigh that reason. So, ordinary people think that once you have established whether A deserves X or not, that the question about whether A is entitled to keep X has been settled. Now you know better. If I can prove that you don't deserve X, I haven't proven at all that I'm permitted to take X from you. Think of the case of body parts. And if I can prove that you do deserve X, if I have a strong enough countervailing reason, it's going to be still permissible to take X from you. So, what are we to conclude about desert? Well, I think the best way to characterize the relationship between deserving and entitlement is to say that A deserves X is a good reason for A keeping X, but that reason might not always be decisive. Conversely, A doesn't deserve X certainly poses a question about whether A should keep X, but there could be many decisive reasons for A keeping X that have nothing to do with A deserving that thing. So, the way to look at desert claims, and indeed many other claims, is to conceive of them as reasons that we have to take into account. I leave it up to you to decide whether they're strong or they're weak reasons, but they're reasons, and we have to evaluate those reasons in light of the other reasons that we might be able to bring to bear on that particular question. Okay, so what is desert? Well, I think to judge Peyton Manning worthy is to judge Peyton deserving is to judge him worthy in some way. It's to judge that he has features that make a given outcome his just reward. Now, I think to say that Peyton is deserving is also to acknowledge that he's a person capable of doing things to make himself worthy. If we say that Peyton is not deserving, we might be saying that he's not the sort of person who's capable of doing things to make him worthy. In fact, perhaps that makes him partly a person. And I think the opposite view that he cannot do is that he cannot do anything to make himself worthy of rewards. Peyton has a bunch of endowments, a bunch of talents, a background that he doesn't have any control over, and perhaps there's just nothing he can do with that to make himself worthy of rewards. Now, asking what the point of desert is helps us solve this question about whether Peyton really is deserving of his paycheck. I think concepts are usually only interesting or helpful if they help us distinguish between things that are different. So, when we use the term self-interestedness or selfishness, we use it to describe a set of dispositions or attitudes in contrast with others. Right? So whatever selfishness is, there has to be something that counts as not selfishness. If everything is selfishness, then the concept is not terribly useful. So we want to be able to distinguish selfishness from non-selfishness, as well as desert from not deserving. So any concept of desert that turns everything into something that you've deserved or something that you haven't deserved is not terribly helpful for distinguishing different kinds of situations. So I think the point of desert is to help us distinguish those who have supplied inputs that make them worthy from those who have not supplied such inputs. And so then we look at Peyton Manning and we ask, did he in fact supply the inputs that he needed to supply? It's true, it's possible, but nothing could ever make us worthy. Nothing could ever make us worthy given the opportunities that we've received, but it's just not clear whether this sort of view would be helpful in enabling us to live together. That is to say, if that's true, then desert's just not going to do any work for us. And that's certainly a possibility, but perhaps an unattractive one, as I want to suggest later. So, it's unattractive because I think if a world where people fail to recognize the difference between contributions and non-contributions, a world where people fail to recognize the difference between contributions and non-contributions is probably not a better world where people attempt to show the difference between contribution and non-contribution. Okay. Again, we use concepts because they're helpful. If a world where recognizing people's contributions, their attitudes, their dispositions is a good place to live, then we have reason to think about these sorts of distinctions and start categorizing people into more or less deserving, not necessarily based on their luck, but based on what they've done with the luck that they've received. Now, I said earlier on that we were going to distinguish between deserving and being entitled. I also want to distinguish a little bit between deserving and earning. And again, this is piggybacking mostly on the Schmitz reading, which hopefully you've done by now. So, is deserving the same as earning? Well, I think the way most people use the terms, yeah, usually deserving is the same as earning. But I think it's certainly possible to distinguish the two sometimes. And that's because I think desert tracks features of people's character more often than not, whereas earning tracks features about what they've done. But the reason they're mostly intertwined with one another is that people's characters and their actions are obviously things that go hand in hand quite frequently. That is to say, when people's actions are wrong or evil or bad, we tend to attribute that to bad character. That's in some cases incorrect, but that's how we often think about it. And at the same time, when people have good character, that's usually because, when we say they have good character, it's usually because we think that their actions have been praiseworthy in a number of ways. And so, but there's a difference. There's a difference because there are people with good character who have not had opportunities to demonstrate that good character, and there might be people who've done good actions, but not necessarily because they have a good character. And so desert and earning can come apart sometimes. So, to give you an example, it's possible for unforeseen circumstances to make it impossible to earn my paycheck. So, for example, if I fall sick and I'm unable to lecture and come to class and do office hours and all the things that I'm paid to do, then it will be true that I have not earned my paycheck. Now, it doesn't mean that necessarily I should be stripped of my job because I haven't earned my paycheck. And the reason I probably shouldn't is because there are things about my character that would suggest that if I had not fallen sick, I would have earned my paycheck. And so we can look at deserving. Do I deserve to keep my job? Probably. I am hopefully the sort of person whom, if given the opportunity, will earn my paycheck. And so, again, when we think about the work that these concepts are doing, there are people who don't earn their paychecks because of features of their character that presumably make them less worthy of the job that they hold. And then there's people who earn their paychecks, who don't earn their paychecks, but not because of features of their character, but because the life gets in the way, right? Circumstance gets in the way, accidents and so on and so forth get in the way and prevent them from doing justice to the opportunities that they have. So let's think about political implications of all of this. Desert, earning, entitlement. Now, luck, good and bad, is everywhere. But presumably good societies enable people to do justice to the opportunities they receive. That is to say, what matters at the end of the day is what you do with the opportunities that you have. One of the ways good luck is good, or one of the reasons good luck is good, is because it provides people with opportunities to show that they're worthy. bad luck, in many ways it's bad because it makes it harder for you to demonstrate worthiness. So think about people who are born in unfortunate circumstances. One of the reasons that's a bad thing, one of the reasons that we call that bad luck, is because they don't get as many opportunities to show that they are in fact deserving. So it's true that when you're born you haven't earned anything, but it's also true that you might be the sort of person capable of being worthy, capable of being deserving, and good fortune is one of the things that can help you establish that. Now, let me conclude with some thoughts about different ways government or society can do you injustices. When a society doesn't respect your contributions, that can be unjust. They're not respecting what you did. When a government violates its own rules about how it allocates rewards, has been done an injustice because you didn't get what you were promised. And when a society doesn't respect you, that is to say, who you are, that too might count as an injustice. I kind of wish that we had this online discussion this week, so that we could talk about all of this a little bit more. But for now, I'll be signing off, and we'll talk a little bit more about need in our next lecture.